Hello. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yes, good morning. So, shall we start the session? Shall we begin the session? Today's topic is chapter number 2, digital image fundamental. That is, what are the various fundamental operations that is covered with the help of the digital image. That is the digital image fundamentals. So this says that those who wish to succeed must ask the right preliminary question. That is, what are the various questions that is available? What are the various basic questions that is available in the assignment? What are the various basic questions that is available in the digital image processing? So those who want to succeed must ask the right questions, or must ask the right preliminary question, that is the before question that is available before the digital fundamentals. So first one is the elements of the visual perception. That is what we are going to do with the visual perception. So although the field of the digital image processing is built on the fundamentals of mathematical and the probabilistic formulation, so whatever the image processing, whatever the data that is available for the image processing, that is built on the foundations of the mathematical and the probabilistic formulations, human intuition and analysis plays a central role. So that plays a central role in the choice of one technique versus another, and this choice is often based on the subjective visual judgment. So what are the various judgments that is available for the choice that is available on the subjective visual judgments. Hence, developing a basic understanding of the human visual perception is the first step in our journey. So this book is appropriate. So whatever the perception that is available, that is available within this book, that is also one of the best method to assign the task to do the methods. Now, first one is the structure of the human eye. What is the structure of the human eye? That shows a simplified horizontal cross section of the human eye, and this eye is nearly a sphere with an average diameter of approximately 20 mm, and three membrane is enclosed within the eye, that is the cornea, sclera, outer chloride, choroid, and the retina. So these are the three parts that is available. There are three membranes that is available that enclose the eye. That is the cornea, sclera, and choroid, and the retina. And the chloria is a tough, transparent tissue that covers the interior surface of the eye. That is what we are going to cover within the eye. That is continuous with the cornea. The sclera is also the opaque membrane that encloses the remainder of the optical or so this diagram is a simplified diagram of a cross section of the human eye that consists of three parts. One is the cornea, sclera, choroid, and the retina. This is available over here. Now let's see one by one. When we talk about the cornea, that is a tough, this is a part of the cornea that is a tough transparent tissue that covers the interior or anterior surface of the eye. Continuous with the cornea, the sclera is an opaque membrane that encloses the remainder of the optic globe. That enclosed means that is available for the remainder of the optic globe, and the choroid lies directly below the sclera. And this membrane contains a network of the blood vessels that serves as a major source of the nutrition to the eye. That is what is a major source that is used with the that is used with the source that is available with the that is available with the digital image creation, and that slides directly below the sclera, and this membrane contains a network of the blood vessels that serves as a major source of the nutrition to the eye. And even superficial injury to the choroid, often not deemed serious, can lead to the severe eye damage as a result of the inflammation that results or that restricts the blood flow. That means the blood is not regulated once, and that is not regulated that restricts the blood flow, and the choroid coat is heavily pigmented and hence helps to reduce the amount of the continuous light entering the eye. That means if the blood is coated out, and if there are clots with the blood, then there is a eye blindness, and there is a choroid that is divided into ciliary body and the iris. And the later context would expand into divided into multiple parts. And the lens is made up of the concentric layers of the fibrous cells and is suspended by the fiber that attach to the ciliary body. And it contains 60 to 70% of the data, 60% of the water, about 6% of the fat, and more protein than any other tissues in the eye. So it contains 60 to 70% water and about 6% of the fat and more proteins than any other tissues in the eye. And the lens is colored by the slightly yellow pigmentation that increases with the age. That I agree. And the lens, yeah, there is a yellow pigmentation, that means there is a eye blindness with the that increases with the age. That means the eye blindness, we can say, or the eye is not working, or eye is not, we can say, yes, it is not useful. In extreme cases, the excessive clouding of the lens caused by the affiliation, commonly referred to as the cataracts, and can lead to the poor color discrimination and loss of the clear vision. So if there is a extreme or the extreme excess or excessive clouding of the lens that is caused by the affiliations that is used, that is commonly referred to as a clouding, issue, issue that is available with excessive clouding of the lens that is caused by the affiliations or affliction, commonly refers to as the contract, can lead to a poor color discrimination and the loss of the clear vision. And the lens absorbs approximately 8% of the visible light spectrum with relatively high uh, relatively high absorptions or higher absorption at the shorter wavelength. And both the infrared and the ultraviolet lights are absorbed by the proteins within the lens structure and in excessive amount can damage the eye. Then when we talk about the innermost membrane of the eye, that is known as the retina, with which lines the which is available inside the walls entire portion, that means the membrane, that part is known as the retina. Now look over here. This is the retina, that is the inner surface area, inner area within the eye shape. And when the eye is properly focused, light forms an object outside the eye that is imaged onto the retina, and the pattern vision is afforded by the distribution of the discrete light receptors over the surface of the retina. And there are two classes of the receptors. One is a cones, one is the rods. And the cones in each membrane or each number between 6 and 7 million. That covers between the 6 and the 7 millions, and they are located in the central portion of the retina. Now, if I'm talking about the diagram that is available within the retina, there is the visual axis, vitreous humor, blind spot, and the nerves and the shield. The lens observed approximately 8% of the visible light spectrum with relatively higher absorption at the shorter wavelength, and both the infrared and the ultraviolet light are absorbed by the proteins within the lens structure and in excessive amounts can damage the eye. So if there is a more focus, or we can say more infrared and the ultraviolet rays are absorbed by the proteins within the lens structure, that can also damage the eye. That means everything is in the excessive. That is absorbed by the protein within the lens structure, that is excessive amount can damage the eye. Now the innermost membrane of the eye is the retina that lines the inside of the walls inside the posterior portion, and when the eye is properly focused, light forms an object, the eye is emit on the retina. And there are two parts, one is a cones, one is a rods. And the cones in each eye between or number between the 6 and 7 million. And they are located in the center portion of the retina known as the fovea and also sensitive to the color. And humans can also resolve final details with each cone, largely because each cone is connected to its own nerve end, and the muscles controlling the eye rotate the eyeball until the image of an object of interest falls on the fovea. Then cone vision is known as photopic, or bright light vision. And the number of rods is much larger, that range from the 75 to the 150 million that are distributed over the retinal surface. The larger the area of distribution and the fact that such roads are connected to a single nerve and reduce the amount to detail, as a road serves as a general overall picture of the concept that is used with the we can say overall picture field of the view, and they are not involved in the color vision and are sensitive to the low level of the illumination. For example, when the objects that appear brightly colored in the daylight, when seen by a moonlight, appear as a colorless forms. So if there is any object that is Also, that appears brightly colored in the daylight when seen by the moonlight appear as a colorless. So one is appear as a colored in daylight and color appears as a colorless in the moonlight because only the rods are stimulated, and this phenomenon is known as a stopic and the dim light vision. This is a figure that shows how the various degrees of the axis that covers between the cones and the rods. And except for yes, yeah, just wait. So it shows the density of the rods and the cones for a cross section of the right eye that passing through the region of the emergence of the optic nerve from the eye. And the absence of the receptors in this area results in a so-called blind spot. That is, except for this reason, the distribution of the receptor is rarely symmetric above the fovea. And the receptor density is measured in the degrees from the fovea, that is measured by the angle formed by the visual axis and the line passing through the center of the lens that intersecting the points. Now, if I'm talking about the figure 2.2, that the cones are the more dense in the center of the retina. So this is more dense in the center of the retina. And also note that the rods increase in the density from the center out to the approximately 20 degree of axis and then decrease in density out of the extreme periphery of the retina. And the fovea itself is a circular indentation in the retina of about 1.5 mm in the diameter. And in terms of the future dimensions, that when we talking about the square or the reception rectangular area of the sensing elements is more useful. Therefore, by taking some liberty in the interpretation, we can view the fovea as a square sensor area of the size 1.5 into 1.5. And there is a CCD, that is a charge coupled device, that also imaging in terms of the medium resolution. In terms, we have the number of the element in the receptor array that is no longer than the 5 mm into 5 mm. And while the ability of the humans to integrate intelligence and the experience with the vision makes these types of number comparisons somehow superficial, that keeps in mind for the future discussion that the basic ability of the eye to resolve details that is comparable to current electronic imaging senses. Now, next one is how the image will be formed, that is the image formation in the eye. So in an ordinary photographic camera, the lens has a fixed local length, and focusing at various distances is achieved by varying the distance between the information eye that is available within the eye. So shall we start again? Next, okay. Next topic is image formation in the eye. How the image will be formed in the eye. So in an ordinary, that is normal photographic camera, the lens has a physical focal length that we have studied in the last paragraph, and focusing at the various distances that is achieved by varying the distance between the lens and the imaging plane. So that varies between, or there is a variation between the lens and the imaging plane where the film is located. In a human eye, the converse is true. That means it is opposite to the film makers. The distance between the lens and the imaging region is fixed, and the focal length needed to achieve the proper focus that is obtained by varying the shape of the lens and the fibers in the clearly body accomplish this, that flattering or thickening the lens for the distance or the near object, whatever the near object that is used, whatever the data that is used for the near object, and the distance between the center of the lens and the retina along the visual axis is approximately 17 meters. Look over this diagram. This is given as a 17 mm over here, and the range of the focal length is approximately 14 to 17. So this is available between to the 14 to 17, and this is covered as a 15 mm. The latter taking the place when the eye is relaxed and focused as a distance greater than about 3 meters. Geometry in figure 2.3 that illustrate how to obtain the dimensions of an image obtained on the retina. So what are the various images that is focused, that is obtained on the dimensions of the image that is formed on the retina. For example, suppose that a person is looking at a tree 15-meter high at a distance of 100 meters. This is a diagram that is given for the person that is ranging, or that range for the 15-meter height or high at a distance of the 100 meter. This is the distance of the 100 meter. This is the 15-meter high. Now, letting the h denotes the height of that object in the retinal image, the geometry of the figure 2.3 yields 15 by 100, that is equals to the h by 17, or h equals to 2.55 mm. And as indicated in the section 2.11, the retinal image is focused on the region of the fovea, and the perception that takes place by the relative excitation of the light reception. That means the light will be passing on for this 100 meter and the 15 mm, which transform the radiant energy into the electric impulses that ultimately are decoded by the brain. That means it is ultimately decoded by the brain, that is the radiant energy into the electric impulses. Now, next one is brightness, adaptation, and the discrimination. How we are choosing or how we are going to adapt the brightness, then adaptations, and the discrimination. So when we talk about the brightness, yes, these three terms are closely related with each other and used as we can say the interchangeably also. That is the brightness, adaptation, and the discrimination. So because the digital images are displayed at a discrete series or discrete set of the intensities, the eye ability to discriminate between the different intensity level is an important consideration in presenting the image processing results. So whatever the result that is available, that is used in the image processing results, and the range of the light intensity levels to which the human visual can adapt is enormous. That means there is a we can say minimum result that is available for the processing results, and the range of the light intensity levels to which the human visual system can adapt is enormous, on the order of the tintin from the scotopic threshold to the glare limit. Experimental evidences indicate that a subjective brightness also achieved, that is a logarithmic function of the light intensity incidence on the eye. And this is the figure for 2.4 that shows what is the range of the subjective sensations that's showing a particular adaptations level, whether it is going for the brightness, whether it is going for the adaptation and the discrimination. This is the glare limit. This is the limit, and this is the subjective brightness. Then this is the adaptation range. This is the scotopic threshold, scotopic, and the photopic. This is the log of the intensity that is in the ml, and that is available with the light intensity with versus the subject or subjective brightness that illustrate the characteristics. And the long solid curve represents the range of the intensity to which the visual system can adapt. And in photopic vision alone, the range is about 10.106. That means there is a high range for this transmission that range from the photopic to the scotopic. But the main part in interpreting the impressive dynamic range that depicted in the 2.4, that the visual system cannot operate over such a range simultaneously. That does not take that range or such range simultaneously. Rather, it accomplishes this large variation by changing its overall sensitivity. That phenomenon is known as the brightness adaptations. A total range of distinct intensity level the eye can discriminate simultaneously is rather than small when compared with the total adaptation range. So when we compare, okay. So there is a range that is in a photopic vision. That range is about the 10 power 6, and the transmission from the scopic to the photopic vision that is gradual over that is increased over the approximate range that ranges from this one to this one, that is ranging from the 0.001 to 0.01 as the double branches of the adaptation curve in the range show. So this is a range that is available with the BA, BB, and the scopetic. There is the adaptation range, there is a subjective brightness, and there is a scopetic threshold log of the intensity. And the essential point that is used is that is the brightness adaptation that when we are going to use a range simultaneously, and the total range of all distinct intensity level the eye can discriminate simultaneously is rather small when compared with the total adaptation range. For any given set of conditions, the current intensity level of the visual system is called as a brightness adaptations level, which may correspond with the brightness. For example, the brightness BA in the figure 2.4, the short intersecting curve represents the range of the subjective brightness that the eye can perceive when adapted to this level. And this range is rather restricting, having a level that is a BB, and below it there are the all stimuli that are perceived as a differentiative blacks. And the upper portion of the curve is not actually restricted, but for example, if it is extended too far, that loses its meaning because much higher intensity would simply raise the adaptation level higher than the BA. And the ability of the eye to discriminate between the changes in the light intensity at any specific adaptation level is also of the considerable interest. That is the experimental use to determine the capability of the human visual consideration, human eye, for brightness, for discrimination that consists of having a subject look at the flat that is used large enough to occupy the entire field of the view. And this area typically is a diffuser such as opaque glass that is illuminated from behind a light source whose intensity I can be varied. That intensity can also be varied to the field as a incrementation of the illumination, and there is a delta I that is in the form of the short duration flash that appears in a center that is available like this one. There's a I plus delta I. Now just do one thing, read out this paragraph because delta is used in this one, and if there is any doubt then please ask the doubts. Now tell me any doubts, anyone, in this delta I and the I? This is the variation in the intensity that is represented, or intensity is represented simply by the I, and if there is any intensity that is represented by the delta I. Like we have studied about the differentiation integration in the mathematics, in the same way it is available as a yes, right. It is used for the short duration flash. And if the delta I is not bright enough, that means if it is not bright enough, the subject says no, indicating no perceivable change. As delta I gets stronger, the subject may give a positive response of the yes. That means it depends on the delta I, it depends on the variation that is available. So if it is a bright enough or not bright enough, that means it is not glowing enough, not bright enough, the subject says no, that indicate that the no possible outcomes, no perceivable changes appears. And if it gets stronger, the subject may give a positive response of the yes, indicating a perceived change. Finally, when delta I is strong enough, the subject will give a response of yes at all the times, and the quantity delta IC and the delta I, that means delta IC divided by delta I, or I, where delta IC will give is a increment of the illumination discrimination, that is 50% of the time with background illumination I, that is known as the Weber ratio. And a small value of the IC means that a small percentage of intensity is discriminable, and this represents a good brightness discrimination that is available within the delta I and the delta U. When we talk about the 50% of the time that is taken for the background illumination, that is known as the Weber ratio, that is represented by the Weber ratio, that is delta IC divided by delta I. And a small value of the delta IC divided by delta I means that a small percentage of change intensity is discriminable. And this represents good brightness of the discrimination that is used with a large value of the delta IC divided by delta I. That means a large percentage in intensity is required. This represents poor brightness discrimination. There is a poor brightness discrimination for the delta I and the I. Now this is used as I plus delta I. This is the basic experimental setup to use to characterize the brightness discrimination, and this is the typical Weber ratio as a function intensity that is available as a log I and the log log I and the log IC. And when we plot of the log of delta IC divided by delta I as a function of the log I. That is a general slope that is shown in the figure 2.6. This is available as a general slope that is used for the delta IC and the delta I. And this curve shows that the brightness discrimination is poor, that is the Weber ratio is I. So when the discrimination is poor, that means the ratio is I, and the discrimination is good, that means the ratio is small. That means there is an inverse relationship between the brightness and the Weber ratio. This curve shows that the brightness and discrimination is poor at low levels of the illumination, and it's improved significantly when the Weber ratio decreases. So it depends on the brightness discrimination that is poor or the increased. And the two branches in the curve reflect the fact that a low level of the illumination vision is carried out by the rods, where the high level vision is a function of the cone. So whatever the high level vision, that is illumination vision, that is carried out by the rods, where the high level vision is the function of the cones. And if the background illumination is held constant and the intensity of the other source instead of the flashing, that is not allowed is to vary incrementally from never being perceived to always being perceived. And there's a typical observer that can discern a total of 1 to 2 dozen different intensity changes. And roughly this results in related to the number of the different intensity that a person can see at any point in a monochrome or monochrome image. And this results in an image can be represented by such small number of the intensity value that can be represented that the eye can arouse around the image, and the average background changes, therefore allowing a different set of the incremental changes. That means there will be a incremental changes for the background image, for the background changes that will depicted or that will be detected at each new adaptation level. And the net consequences is that the eye is capable, that means the net solution or the net crux is that the eye is capable of a much broader range of overall intensity discrimination. So when we talk about the discrimination, that means the high and the low, there is a depends on the Webb ratio. That depends on the Webb ratio. We can say Weber ratio. And the net consequences is that the eye is capable of much broader range of overall intensity discrimination. In fact, we show in the section 2.43 that the eye is capable of detecting the objectionable countering effects in monochrome images whose overall intensity is represented by a fewer than approximately 2 dozen levels. And the two phenomenon that is also used that is clearly demonstrate that the perceived brightness is not a simple function of the intensity, that the first is based on the fact that a visual system tends to understand or overshoot around the boundary of the regions of the different intensity. This is the figure that is showing above. The first is the actual intensity, second one is the perceived intensity, and there's a difference between the actual and the perceived. So that is a range, that is a, we can say the match band effect. So first is based on the fact that the visual system tend to undershoot or overshoot around the boundary of the region of different intensity. And figure 2.7a shows a striking example of this phenomena. And although the intensity of the stripes is constant, we actually perceive a brightness pattern that is strongly scalloped near the boundaries, and these simply we can say are much bands than the Ernest Mach, who was first described as a phenomenon in the 1865. Now, when we talk about the second phenomenon that is known as a simultaneous contrast, that is related to the fact that a region perceived brightness does not depend simply on the its intensity, as figure 2.8 demonstrate, and all the center square has exactly the same intensity. This is a square that has the same intensity. This is the zigzag that appears to be the eye, that appears to the level that is appear to the eye to become darker as the background gets lighter. And for example, when we talk about the layman terms example, that take a piece of the paper that seems white when lying on a desk but can appear totally black when used to shield the eyes while looking directly at a bright sky. It depends on the, yes, correct. That means the color will change when you're lying on the desk. It can appear totally black when used to shield the eye while looking at a bright sky. The other examples of the human perception phenomena are optical illusions that in which the eye fills in non-existing information or wrongly perceived geometrical properties of the object. Now, other examples of the human perception phenomena are optical illusions in which the eye fills in the non-existing information or wrongly perceives geometrical properties of the object. For example, when we talk about the figure 2.9, that shows some example. In first figure, there is the outline of the square. This is the in a black color. The same effect, this time within a circle, that can be seen. Yeah, that gives the illusion of this one. So these are the three figures, that is A, B, C, and figure 2.8, that are examples of the simultaneous contrast. And all the inner square have a same intensity, but they appear progressively darker as the background becomes lighter. This is the more dark, this is the less dark, then this is the less dark, this is the black, then gray, then light gray. So all the inner square have a same intensity. That means it is a, yeah, this is of the light color, this is something dark, this is more dark, and the background color is also going reverse. And all the inner squares have a same intensity, but they appear progressively darker than the as a normal as the background becomes lighter. This is the same that we have studied. This is the figure 2.9 that shows some well-known optical resolutions or illusions. This is an example of this one. That is a complete circle, that the horizontal line segment that are represented with the figure 2.59c that is used within this, and the two horizontal line segment that is available in figure 2.9c. These are the four figures. One is A. This is the A, B, C, and C. There are parts. Then A, B, C, and D. That is some well-known optical illusions, and the two horizontal line segment in 2.9c. This is the 2.9c that are of the same length, but one appears shorter than the other. This is the same length, but one appears shorter than the other. The reason is that there is an arrow mark that is available over here. And finally, all the lines in 2.9d. Then finally, all the lines in figure 2.9d that are oriented at the 45 degree. This is oriented at the 45 degree. There is a straight line angles that are equidistant and the parallel. And yet the cross hatching creates the illusion that those lines are far from being parallel. And the optical illusions are a characteristics of the human visual system that is not properly or that is not fully understood. Now, next one is how we can use the electromagnetic spectrum. What is the main formula? What is the main logic that is used between the electromagnetic spectrum? That is the light and the electromagnetic spectrum. That is the next topic. Now, tell me any doubts in these four figures? That is a figure 2.9a, 9a, b, c, and d. This is a square. Yeah, this is a circle. This is the lines, and this is the 45 degree angle. These are the four well-known optical illusions that is available. Yeah, this is a next one is a second one is a complete circle. Then C part is a horizontal line. Then D part is a 45 degree angle that are equidistant in the parallel. And yet the cross hatching creates the illusion that those lines are far from being parallel. And the optical illusions are a characteristics of the human visual system that is not fully understood. That is not fully understood over here.